For centuries, physical geography has dictated the reach of power. A sovereign government's ability to enforce laws, collect taxes, and control its population has always stopped exactly at its land border. Even the digital age is built on physical infrastructure. The global internet relies on thousands of miles of submarine cables and terrestrial fiber optic lines that must eventually surface on sovereign soil, creating tangible geographic choke points. Because data travels through a physical router in a specific country, nations can legally and physically intercept it. Systems like the Great Firewall exist because governments can monitor and filter data at these terrestrial entry points. So long as data is tied to the ground, its flow remains subordinate to the map. But that dynamic changes when the infrastructure leaves the surface. The physical constraints of the terrestrial map end 550 kilometers straight up in the frictionless environment of low Earth orbit. This data visualization shows the scale of the new architecture. By 2026, Starlink deployed over 10,000 active satellites, wrapping the Earth in a hardware shell that provides a functional monopoly on global connectivity. Amazon is the only entity with the capital and infrastructure to challenge that position. Through Project Kuiper, they are rapidly launching their own full orbital shell to match SpaceX's coverage. Amazon and SpaceX are racing to occupy specific 550-kilometer orbital planes, turning the upper atmosphere into a grid of competing private territories. The sheer density of these constellations ensures continuous global coverage, making traditional ground-based borders secondary to the reach of the network. Early satellite internet had a geographic vulnerability. The signal had to be beamed down to a physical, ground-based receiver station within a specific nation's jurisdiction. That bottleneck was resolved by inter-satellite laser links, or ISL protocols. Satellites now use targeted lasers to transmit data horizontally. By keeping the stream entirely in orbit, they physically bypass national firewalls and terrestrial intercept points. This architecture creates orbiting dark nets, closed, highly encrypted communication loops controlled entirely by proprietary routing software. Whoever owns these ISL protocols dictates the world's secure data flow, removing the ability of sovereign nations to monitor or censor communications. Beyond the hardware, there is a struggle for invisible real estate. Satellites require specific electromagnetic frequencies, the K-band and Ku-band, to communicate without interference. These frequencies, along with physical orbital slots, are allocated by the International Telecommunication Union. This body ensures that space resources are shared among participating nations. This chart illustrates the practice of spectrum squatting. Corporations launch mass placeholder satellites specifically to hoard available frequencies, effectively blocking smaller nations from securing their own orbital slots. This regulatory capture allows two private companies to legally and physically partition the Earth's atmosphere into exclusive corporate empires. Given this monopoly on the sky, a logical question arises. Why don't nations simply shoot down these satellites to regain control? This density creates a new strategic reality. A massive swarm of thousands of satellites protects the network through its sheer scale. A traditional anti-satellite weapons strike triggers the Kessler effect. The destroyed hardware creates a cascading debris cloud, shredding every object in that orbital plane. Because the Department of Defense and NATO now rely on these mega-constellations for tactical operations, a debris cloud would immediately paralyze the attacking superpower's own communication capabilities. This risk of mutual destruction makes Amazon and SpaceX's infrastructure effectively untouchable, securing a level of independence usually reserved for nation-states. By 2026, SpaceX and Amazon function as the foundational infrastructure for global trade and military logistics. Their immunity to kinetic attack and control over global data flow gives these companies leverage over the nations operating beneath them. These two corporate entities now possess more verifiable physical geopolitical leverage than the vast majority of the nation-states on the map. Developing and developed nations now face an impossible choice for their national internet backbones. They can no longer rely on domestic, land-based systems to compete globally. This animated map shows the emergence of a digital iron curtain. Countries are forced to align their national infrastructure with either the Amazon or the SpaceX ecosystem. We are watching the construction of a private, global operating system for human data that exists beyond the reach of international law or government jurisdiction. As these proprietary shells become the mandatory backbone for digital life, borders that define global power move from the soil to the 550-kilometer orbital plane.